Okay, so the thing I handed out to you, and guys at home, I pulled it up on the screen, but you can find this on the Google Slides too. So 6.4 is so much writing and so many definitions. The only way we can get through it in a day and not 5 is if I just give you a handout. It makes no sense for me to write every single one of these things on the board and then make you copy them down and have you just copy them down while I'm not listening. So if you don't like the guided notes, you can always copy them down into your notes later. But this way we don't waste a bunch of class time with me trying to write them out. Yeah, there's a lot of writing here. And all this would have been written, it all would have been written on the board. So thank God I did this. So 6.4 is talking about basically like sampling and how you perform an experiment. Okay, so for example, let's say that I wanted to know whether or not students at Oregon High School wanted prom inside or outside. Okay, so the population that I would be surveying would be students that can attend prom at Oregon High School. So juniors and seniors at Oregon can attend prom. So my population, all the people that I want information from would be juniors and seniors at Oregon High School. Okay, so population is who you want information from. That would be mine, just juniors and seniors at Oregon. If you wanted to know whether or not the town of Oregon wants a dodgeball arena, the town of Oregon would be your population size. So it would be sick. I just came up with it off the top of my head and I was like, hey, that's something we need actually. Let me go patent it. So Shark Tank, here I come. So sometimes I'm too stupid for myself. So I know how it goes 147. So is it feasible? And this one kind of is it feasible for me to interview every single junior and senior at the school?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not that hard, but wouldn't it take quite a bit of time for me to hunt down like the 1 or 2 juniors that won't respond to it, or like the 5 seniors that are like, screw you, I'm not answering, I'm not going to prom, I don't care. It'd be a little bit difficult to get an answer out of some people, but I could get the vast majority of them. Yeah. Okay, what if we went back to that survey about the dodgeball arena? Would it be feasible for me to quickly survey every single person that lives in Oregon?
Yeah.
That's what, 4,000 people?
It wouldn't
be
got like a mass text.
Right. Would everyone respond to a mass text or email though?
Yes.
No. Do you respond to every single email that you get from like a student asking for a survey? No. Okay. Exactly. So it's possible for me to ask them all, but it's not possible for me to get an answer back from all of them. Larger scale. What if you want to know what the favorite candy of the U.S. is? Is it possible for me to survey every single U.S. citizen?
Oh, yeah.
Not happening. That's why the census happens like once every 10 years. It's so time consuming and expensive and uses so much manpower and resources. I know. That was a year ago. All right, think about globally. Is it possible to survey the entire globe about something?
No.
Literally impossible. Because there's so many underdeveloped countries that don't even have technology, like it would be absolutely impossible. So because of that, we use what's called a sample size. Okay, so back to prom. If I wanted to know how many juniors and seniors wanted it outside versus inside, I don't have to survey all 200. I could survey 100 or 75 or 50 and say like, that's like a pretty good amount that they will probably determine what the rest of those seniors and juniors want. If I wanted to know about the dodgeball arena, I could survey like 200 people or 300 people in Oregon. And that would probably account for most of Oregon's opinion, right? So sample is the subset of the people that you're actually going to interview, because it's nearly or is absolutely impossible to survey your whole population size. We instead go with a subset group. So there's 4 different ways that you can do that. Okay, so the 4 ways are written here. And I would, as I go through examples, I would write whatever one, write one down that sticks with you. I told you the example and the kind of sampling and the definition of it, but I left the example part open for you to write something in. So I would suggest writing down whatever one is really one that hits home with you. First one is self-selected. So this means that you participate if you want to. Back to your, you usually get social emails from people, right? asking about things, or like people from journalism might email out. If you, right. So if you chose to email back, you self-selected to be part of their survey. If you decided not to and you didn't email back, like Evan never does, you chose to not be part of their survey. So self-selected means you elect to be a part of it. Kind of like an Instagram poll or like a Facebook poll or a Twitter poll. I could keep scrolling right past that and never answer it. But if I chose to answer, I chose to be a part of that survey. Does that make sense?
Well, once you go into the scores and put it like right where everybody taps, and then so you.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. And then
I've
I've had to like message people like, I'm sorry, the thing I chose was like a super hateful choice and I did not mean to choose that. You just can't put it where my thumb goes. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Systemic sample means you have a system or a rule along with it. So this would be like you chose like alphabetically, you have a whole list of juniors and seniors for prom, and you chose every 11th person to interview, or every person that is wearing red today. That's a junior or senior. You're going to go interview. That's Leah. Right. So as long as you have a rule along with it, it's fine. Like that's a systemic sample. As long as it's not just like I'm going to go interview that pack. That's not systemic. There's a continual rule you can use throughout the entire population to get your sample size. Hey, it would work. It would work. So convenience sample is the least accurate, the worst one to ever use. You do not go out of your way to obtain this sample. So if you wanted to know juniors and seniors that want prom outside or inside, I would walk right down to a junior lunch right now and be like, hey, prom inside or outside? And I'd get their answers and I'd leave and I would never ask anybody else. That's convenience. I did not go out of my way. I went into one classroom right next door, got their responses, and I didn't care about anyone else. That's totally convenience. I didn't go out of my way at all. If you did Oregon, you might stand outside the grocery store, Super Value, for 45 minutes, ask every person that went in if they wanted a dodgeball arena, take their answers, go home. You did not go out of your way to ask those people. You stood at a door and let them come to you. The last one is random. This is the best one. This is the one you want. And there's lots of different ways to do it, but the simplest way to explain would be dump everyone's names in a hat that are juniors and seniors at Oregon and start pulling names. Every name I pull, maybe I'm going to pull 50, 75 names. Those are the people I'm going to go survey or interview. Okay, so randomize means that every single person in your population has an equal chance of being chosen for the sample size. So every single junior and senior are in my hat, so they all have equal chances of being sampled for that. Okay. All right. I want you to take some time, maybe 5 minutes, to answer 1 and 2. And I realized I labeled every question 1 and 2. So the first 1 and 2, the one that's talking about the sports writer and Kaden with favorite candy. So 1 and 2. So what they're doing is setting up an experiment for you. And they're saying, this is the experiment. Now, can you tell me what kind of sampling they chose? So you have 4 total options. Say what kind of sampling method they used for that, for A, B, or C, and all of them. You can talk about this too. I would talk about it. Please talk about it. Please talk amongst yourselves about it. Or be dead silent. That's okay.
I like talking with him.
Okay, let's talk about it.
This morning I hit him on his throat. Yeah, he did. And then the cops came over to us, and I had to tell him that it was all fine, so he wouldn't get a ticket. It was so funny. I was so mad. Yeah, then you almost hit me too.
Talk about the thing.
We're
Talk
talking.
about the thing.
You never specified.
No, I did. I said talk amongst yourselves about the problem. There's no numbers. You should be saying what kind of sampling.
It's a random.
I know, he would have been like my dude. So that's like his name and
Again, I told you guys that this was in your weekly slides. It's also pulled up. So I can scroll down a little bit, but it's also in your weekly
Alright,
slides.
so the first one.
At least 40 or 50 million based on the menu itself. What he's doing.
They're all the same.
No, they're really not.
You're not gonna make this like homework or something, are you?
No, we will have 3 problems about it tomorrow for homework.
Oh,
You
wow.
have to have a Wednesday. I'm
Why couldn't
required to
they
give you a
do all the
Wednesday
same, though?
assignment. It'll be,
It'll
it'll be so easy. Huh?
I check in.
Another check-in. This one will be just as easy. I
That
pro-
should be
just
like
as
every
quick.
Wednesday, your check-ins for us. Like, are you awake? Yes, no.
Oh, yeah, because I really care about that.
Well, if we answer either way, you know we're awake.
True. Then why do I need to ask it?
Because it's a nice question to ask people.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Whose is this? Is this?
It's easy. 2 of them.
Someone we got it.
Oh.
Okay, take another minute.
I got it. I didn't write it down, but I got it.
Yeah.
No, it can't. That don't make sense. No,
So always
which
is
one?
email, yeah.
Which one?
So B.
Yeah.
Then what's number one?
One? Convenient.
No, it's random.
No, it's convenient because
You're asking. what-
That's
contact only the
convenient, you're not going out of your
Yeah,
way
it's
to
on
do
the
that.
front.
Oh, I'm on two. I'm on two.
Oh.
Oh, I was like, what?
Random
I don't
two
know why you're saying
convenience.
And two, and B on the front of the system.
Wait, why are we?
Okay. Okay.
You're supposed to do one.
1A.
Oh.
If the right, so
Convenient.
the prompts to this one was a sports writer's content. It wants to know if college baseball coaches think that wood and bats should be mandatory at the college level.
Actually, a lot of coaches think about that.
I'm sure they do. That's why it's an actual experiment that was done. So A, the writer might contact only the coaches that he has numbers for already in his phone. What is that?
Convenient.
It's convenience. He did not go out of his way. It was like, hey, I got these 10 numbers in my phone. Easy. I'm not going to do any work for this. B, the writer mails out surveys to all coaches and uses only the answers he gets back.
I think systematic.
Self-selected.
That's what I said.
So you have to take the initiative to get the mail, write your response back, send it back. You elected to be part of that experiment, or you elected to not be part of that experiment. So he calls and asks every 10th coach on the master list for coaches for college baseball.
Systematic.
Systemic, yes.
That's what I
There's
said.
a rule along with it. You say every 10th one, and then you're done. Out of that population, I don't know why I said that so weird the first time. You choose every 10th coach. Good. All right. 2, Caden wants to sample the school to see what their favorite candy is. Identify a sampling method. So A, all students' names are put into a hat, and he draws from the hat to choose students to interview. Random, very good.
That's good.
He waits at the Blackhawk Center door and asks the people that walk by on their way out of school.
Convenient.
No, that's, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was right.
So he didn't choose the 3rd person from every door or the 10th person that walked out. That could be a mixture of convenience and systemic. Since he's just choosing every single person that walks out, that's just going to be convenience. He didn't go out of his way or anything. He probably parks in the Blackhawk Center parking lot and just chose some random people on his way out. He posted a poll on his Instagram story. Self-selected. Very good. All right. So bias. What's the definition of bias?
Like,
Why is it when you're like leaning one way or another?
Yes. Leaning one way or another. You're one-sided. You're opinionated within that. So there's some sort of opinion or already prejudged choice or decision on whatever you're going to be asked about. So if someone asked me whether and what I thought the best school in the area was, I'm emotionally invested in Oregon. I love Oregon. I teach at Oregon. Obviously, I'm going to say Oregon. If someone asked me what the best school in this area in Arizona was, I'd be like, I don't know. I'll look at their test scores. I'd be objective to it because I don't have an emotional investment. I don't have any opinion on anything out there. I would just look at test scores and the report card. Versus here, I would be like, well, I'm biased towards Oregon. I have an emotional investment in it. Maybe when you graduate, you would say like, well, I have a negative emotional investment in Oregon. So I would say any school but Oregon. So you can underrepresent a group, you can overrepresent a group, but there can be bias in sampling. Okay, so let's say you wanted to know whether or not basketball was athlete's favorite sport and you hung out outside of a baseball game to ask people, is there bias there?
Yes.
Yes. Is baseball or is basketball their favorite sport if you're asking baseball players?
Well, it could be.
It could be, it very well could be. But you're going to a baseball game. Sometimes like the sport you're currently in is your favorite. Maybe that's the only sport they play. You're over-representing baseball, but you're underrepresenting every other sport. If you went to every single sporting event and you surveyed all of them, then you're equally including all sports, and then you could get a more accurate description. Let's say I wanted to know again whether juniors or seniors wanted, let's say juniors or seniors wanted prom inside or outside. So if I went to only ask the seniors or only ask the juniors, that could be biased. If I asked just the cheerleaders that are juniors or seniors, whether or not they wanted outside or inside, that could be biased. You need to make sure you get groups of all different kinds of people that are in that population. Okay, so looking at the next number 1 and number 2, some of these are tough. And as long as your explanation backs up your claim, you can kind of sometimes lean both ways. So go to number 1, number 2 about the concert hall, and Kaylee want to know if people love cats, and decide whether or not it's biased or unbiased, but try to give a little bit of explanation or reasoning to it. These are your notes, so I'm not going to make you write it down. Just make sure you talk about it. And then if you have extra time, I'm going to give you like 3 minutes. If you have extra time, try to say what would fix the bias. How could you change the way you sampled to not make it a biased selection? Go ahead, talk it up.
Margin of error. You really wouldn't know the word. Next page. The action. That's math.
I know, this section's so weird.
Wait, the first one,
This is 520 and then 50, 10 of 11, so what, 6? Yeah, sorry, 526.
Talk about it, talk about it.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to put like a, for this back, but are we supposed to put like minimum and maximum?
Yes, based on there, yes, absolutely. So that's where you're gonna bring the P
Oh.
minus.
This is 706.
Okay, so tell me number 1, the concert hall. Biased, absolutely biased. You go to ask concert goers whether or not how many concerts they've been to, like huge bias. Obviously, they're at one right now, so they definitely already gone to 1. They're probably going to go to more as well. 2, when Kaylee surveys 1 person from every OCUSD classroom, is that unbiased or biased?
Unbiased.
Very good. So you could fight the argument of biased. Because I didn't state a population, if you go to only OCSD classrooms, are you likely to find someone over the age of 60 that you're going to survey?
Yeah.
Unless it's a sub, yeah.
Oh, right, a sub possibly, but otherwise you're kind of underrepresenting just the elderly population. But because if I had said, if you're like, you want to know whether or not school students, employees love cats, that would be absolutely unfightable, definitely unbiased. There is a small argument for bias here. I personally absolutely think it's unbiased. It's super awesome. It's a great survey. B sends out a survey to 100 people that own a subscription to Dogs R Us magazine.
That's biased.
Super biased. You want to know if they like cats, and you send it out to a dog lovers.
No, that's not biased.
Oh, that's so
No,
biased.
because that's assuming just because someone likes a dog, they don't like a cat.
Right, or it's assuming that they love both. So what about the animal haters? Are you getting those people?
No.
No.
But it wouldn't be
So
biased.
right. So
Just 'cause they like the dog
exactly,
doesn't mean
you're
they
only
hate
sending
their
it to
cat.
dog lovers. You're not sending it to truck guy. Like so a way to fix that would be anyone that has any any kind of magazine subscription. You can send it out to them. That means they have a cooking one, a home decorating one, a truck one, a car one, dogs, cats, bunnies, lizards,
Coats.
vacation, all of them.
That's
All of
gonna
them.
make me mad.
What?
The W now, because you put the picture up there and the thing facing the other way and.
I know. Well, because it was a reflection one. I noticed that yesterday and I was like, man, that's gotta be hard for him to like.
No, it just makes me mad because like it doesn't point that way.
I'm sorry.
It's like my,
He needs to hurry before I think
I'm sorry.
It's already pink.
I know you don't like this.
No, it's already.
Did you?
Put the picture next to it and then we'll.
No. Oh, right. You can- Okay, so very backside, super quick. Because you're not surveying an entire population, there's likely some room for error, right? So you may get 70% of juniors and seniors say like, yeah, prom outside, awesome. But what about the rest of the juniors and seniors who you didn't ask? So of the 50 people you asked, 70 people said have it outside. But you're not accounting for the other 150 you didn't ask. Maybe that 150 might sway it down to maybe only 60 people wanted to be outside, or maybe 80 people actually want to be outside. That margin of error is something you have to account for. So the formula for margin of error is on the back side of your sheet. It is plus or minus 1 over the square root of n, with n being the sample size. And P, which we're not going to get to right away, but P is number or percentage of people answering a certain way. Okay, so what is my n in this case? In my backside problem. Good, 1011, that's my sample size. So if I'm gonna calculate my margin of error, it would be plus or minus 1 over the square root of 1011, which when I figured it out earlier, it was about
3.1%.
yeah, it's about that decimal.
Yep.
But I want to know what's the percentage, right? I want
I
to
know.
find like, what's my actual percentage of people that might want it inside or outside, that might say that TV is their main source of news.
Whoa.
So we have to create this into an interval. To make it into an interval, I first need this into a percentage. So to make it into a percentage, you have to move the decimal point to the right. So this would be plus or minus 3.1%. Okay, and this would be your answer for A. That's your margin of error. But in B, I asked, well, what about your interval? So what's the interval of people that actually would have answered that TV was their main source of news? You have to take your P, which is your percentage of people that actually answered a certain way. In this case, how many people said they wanted TV or they had TV as their main source of news? Good, 52%. You have to take 52% and add and subtract your margin of error. Okay, so if I take 52 and subtract 3.1, what do I get?
49.9. Or 48.
48.9. Good.
So,
2 add, good, 55.1%. Let's put a comma there instead. That is your interval of what people actually responded to it. So from your survey, you got 52% of people answered yes to TV being their main source of news. This is what would actually happen if you surveyed your entire population. You would get an answer based on your margin of error that between 48 and 51% of people will actually have TV as their main source of news. Okay, does that make sense?
yeah.
Surveyed versus what will actually likely happen if you were to survey the entire population. All right, do you think you can do number 2? I think you can. So A, calculate margin of error, that small plus or minus percentage. B, give me the actual interval, which this was like my favorite one. Red Starburst versus pink Starburst.
I'm gonna use my one.
Dude,
Okay, that's
what's
fine.
the best Starburst?
Red, eight Pokemon.
That's.
Oh, who are you? Are you kidding me?
So listen, listen.
Oh.
When I was littler,
It's not bad, but it's not the best.
Listen,
What's the best?
What?
That's.
That was hard.
You know what?
No, when I was like
think
little,
yellow
I
is
used
the
to
best.
think orange was the best, but like now that I like.
Did anyone just hear Quan?
What?
It's yellow.
Yeah.
Orange is actually really
Orange
good.
It's
still
not,
works.
it's not
No, but like,
bad.
listen,
Yellow.
orange was my
Yellow's the
favorite
best.
for a long time, but then like I started